creating your design is just one part of the story. What happens with documentation? Today we look at dimensions, measurements, and plot stems. There's a lot to discuss, so let's take a look. As always, I'm joined by my colleague, Mr. Illés Pap.
Hi there.
Who's going to help us talk about the tools that I just mentioned. Some of the things that we are going to discuss today can be found in other webinars, but we decided to have one solitary show entirely dedicated for dimensions, plot layouts, and plot stems.
Yeah.
And rulebooks, so of course. There's a lot to discuss, so let's dig in. Before we do that, I'll just like to encourage you to ask your questions in the right-hand side in this chat bar. As always, you are very welcome to receive these questions. At the end, we are going to devote some time to discuss them as well. But if you have anything to ask or just say hi, you can do that. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. A couple of words in terms of what we are going to talk about. First, we look at adding dimensions.
Yes.
That's an imperative work in CAD. We talk about the automated and manual ways to add measurements to your drawing and dimensions. After that, we talk about annotations, text, arrowheads, fields in which you want to add some data, maybe some symbols as well. And then we talk about room and area. What are the calculational things and how you can set up the proper numbers, basically. And after that, we look at plot stems, plot layouts, especially how to put together one. And we talk about printing, which is actually, it can be a bit trickier than it might seem. So why don't you dig into to the topic and talk us through the first part, which is dimensioning.
Well, let's start. I think it's good if we start with what sort of dimensions ARCHLine.XP offers. Because actually it covers the whole range, but it's worth note where you can find them and how to handle them. But basically, just as in all of the other cases in ARCHLine, these are sorted in the proper layout, the proper ribbon page, which is in this case is the dimension. There will be parts which we will use today from drafting and from documentation, but the most is because of the documentation. The dimension part is in the dimension field. We will use these commands. First things first, you can also set up styles and settings in advance before you start working with the length, dimension, and so on.
Because just like with everything else in ARCHLine, with drawing doors, windows, walls, slabs, you can set up styles, customized shapes and forms and numbers.
Yes, actually, when we start a command, you can select one of those styles appearing at the left-hand side. Basically, the software is coming with your local defaults. That means should you use the software in the German language or Polish language or any other languages or English, it is shipped with a specific set of settings. Now, in case of for example the English version, we will also cover the metric and the imperial system, how it's handled in the dimension system. But by default, all these things are based on the program settings, and in this case, based on the dimension settings. Now, when I go and try to set up or at least check what is the setting for the length dimension, I will see a bunch of settings coming up and telling me the basic settings, the text properties, how it looks like, what sort of font it uses, and which size. I can even set up a fixed height for plot. It's useful if you would like to make sure that whatever the size of this dimension text is on your drawing, it will always appear, 5 millimeters or something like that. On the other hand, it's a bit tricky to handle because you will see something different on the layout than what will be printed, so you should take care about that. Other than that, if it's not enabled, the software will just simply scale the text just as another drawing part. Also, there are settings for the arrowheads. Now
we see the slashes that they add.
Yes, now currently we see the architectural normal length dimension setting, so that's why it's this architectural tick. But as you can see, you have a range of selection that you can choose from, and also here you can find the standards and how the software handles the measurements. I will cover this later when we already have a few of them, so you will see what makes a change here. Also you can set up the dimension line setting, which is responsible for, you know, in some countries you have the dimension with the dimension and it's like a closed string and nothing else, and not elongated dimension you know, lines, but some other countries they like to have this long projection lines, and those settings are also here. And also you can set all these things into kind of styles that you can just, you know, pick a new name and save it if you would like to switch between 2 or 3 or 4 different styles that you just designed by yourself. So now to place a dimension, we will cover most of these dimensions, not all of them, but the most important ones. And let's just start with this quick dimension. The quick dimension is kind of a go-to option if you know what you would like to measure and you just would like to pick it up and let the software recognize what that is. Like, I mean, if you click here and you click on a line, for example, the software just simply measures that line.
So it's aligned automatically.
And it's automatically aligned. And that is the other thing here. For example, there's a curve here. If I click on it, the software recognizes, okay, I should measure perhaps the diagonal or the radius, or sometimes even the perimeter. But this is just simply picking up that this is a circle, so the default setting is the diameter. So this is a go-to, but if you would like to be more specific, you will use other tools. For example, you would like to measure length, but not likely the whole length of this thing, but perhaps a distance between this corner and this corner. In this case, you will likely use perhaps the align dimension. The align dimension is a very simple. This is kind of the most primitive tool, which is just based on 2 clicks and then it measures. So you just use this one and click on the point, the first point, the second point, and by default it will just simply measure the total length.
And it's aligned based on the points that you picked.
Yeah, and it's aligned with my 2 clicks. But in this specific case, I'm not that happy with this, because I either would like to see this vertical or the horizontal distance, but not this real distance. So this is a tool which allows you to actually, during runtime, switch between modes. The default mode is the real distance. The second mode, which I'm activating with the right click, is the horizontal component of this distance. And if I right click again, it will switch to the vertical component, and then I just click here and the software places that measurement. So whichever component I like, I just move it someplace, click, and then I just continue working and adding more and more dimensions. This is the simplest and most primitive tool to use if you would like to pick up 2 random points and then just measure their distances in anywhere in your drawing.
I understand that there are some more automated ways to measure things in ARCHLine.
Yes, what I like to use, let's jump a little bit, because I will cover these later. Let's jump a little bit, because if this is a building, you should use the walls dimensions a lot, because this actually gives you a list of possibilities that when you select one of these and click on add, you can actually build up a kind of a task list for the software.
In terms of what to measure.
Yes, yes. And this is also kind of a task order. So it will do first this, and after this, and after this. So this is the order how it executes this task which I give it. And the task is that, okay, I'm picking this wall, and then I paste the first dimension string someplace here and do the rest. And the software automatically measures everything based on my previous selection, that it should measure the, for example, in this case, the axis of the window or door, the distance between the walls and the thicknesses of the walls and the total length. So this is what it measures. So whenever I click, if I click here, it's doing the same thing around everywhere. Now there is also a tool which allows you to actually just quickly select the whole drawing. And that's here, it's the all walls. This allows you to do totally the same thing, but in this case you can select the whole drawing, and then when you hit enter, you can actually place this dimension. Let me just place it someplace here so we are not colliding with all the rest of the drawing. So it's actually trying to digest as much as possible from this drawing, not everything, but as much as possible. You can move these someplace else if you don't like it. For example, this is too far, so I'm clicking here and I'm saying, okay, let's right click here, and I'm actually trying to move this whole thing someplace here, and after this one here, and after this one here. But this is not what I would like to do. I don't want to move them one by one. So in that case, you can actually select the total. We call it a dimension string, and then you can move that. Let me just remove this here because I would like to show other dimensions. So this was the building walls, and there are also the window and door dimensions.
So these are item-specific measurement tools.
Yeah. Now we have quite a few windows and doors, and that when you click here, and then you just click on any of these windows, the software will measure that. But actually, there is an option to measure all of them, and then the software just simply recognizes all the windows on this level. You can repeat the same thing on the other levels, and then it just measures all of these. It's automatically locating the internal and external parts of these windows, but in cases it's just not realizing the correct way, you can just flip them around. It's something that you can do. And actually, if you would like to, you can just go here and delete some of these, or all of them. That there is also an all keyword at the right hand side if you just would like to completely get rid of all of the dimensions because I don't know, you made a mistake and you would like to fix it somehow, then you can just erase them with one single click on this level. So this is how you maintain it. Basically, the door and window dimensions they have one specific difference when we compare them with other dimensions. This specific difference is that they are actually created based on two different settings. One setting is that you can set here. Right?
Yes.
Let's just go here. You can find all the same things, the parameters and everything else. But because of its shape, for example, in certain areas of Europe, we use these sort of dimensions. In other parts, we use the different type. But and this is something that is country specific, and this is why it's something that you can actually maintain from the window itself. So you can go and select the window. You can even set it as a global setting. I mean, in advance, you can set this up. And you can go and find this dimension consignment setting, and actually this tells that actually you can set up consignments and other things as well. And this is where you can set up how this dimension looks like. Should it look like this, or should it look like somehow else? What sort of information I would like to add as an extra to this symbol. And actually this is why it looks like that, because it's coming from the window itself. So that's about the door and window dimensions. And going back to this part where we talked about the continuous dimension, and I would like to also show you, I would like to talk about these well as to the continuous dimension is something that you can use as a series of dimension, and then you can pick up, for example, these 2 points. Say, I would like to see a dimension here, and then you just progress
picking the points
forward and pick things, and then it's just, you know, continuously adding those things up to the first part. You cannot go backwards because it will tell that, okay, we already progressed that way, why should we turn around? So in that case, you just start another one, but this is a very fast way to document any sort of things that you just would like to be specific and pick points and one by one from the drawing. If you would like to be even more quick on things that you can actually intersect with a line and just quick dimension those, there's also an option for that, and that's the same thing, the same place here, the continuous dimensions, and it's the same serial dimension. You can actually pick up horizontal, vertical, or slanted with any sort of chosen degree. And that's the whole thing that I'm about to talk now. It's the quote, the virtual intersection. It's just it's a long name. Let's discuss it with an example. It's just you pick this point. See, I'm intersecting this line. I'm intersecting this line, and this line, and even this one. And then now when I move my mouse and I place it somewhere, let's just place it to the same place. The software actually intersected everything, even in this case, even the section line, so I should remove it. But anyway, actually it intersects everything, and it's just auto measures everything, and it's just very fast. If you work on sections, if you work on elevations or simple room distances inside the drawing you would like to quick
just have to create just one continuous line, and everything would be
just
measured.
Slice it and it will measure automatically. So this is a very, very quick tool, and this way, you know, creating the documentation is kind of tedious. It's very time consuming sometimes.
Yes,
but with
yes, it
these
can
tools,
be.
it's much faster. You can go around and quickly add dimensions. And one important thing about these dimensions are by default. For example, this specific here, they are associative. That means they are actually linked to the thing that they measured. I mean, let's say somehow the design changed, and we found that this should not be centered because it is not looking good from the outside. So I'm just changing the distance to something else. Okay, let's say it's this one. Let me just. So I would like to show what happens here. So I've just enlarged this. So it's 0.3. See, now it's automatically updated here.
Because the center point moved, so with the windows.
Yeah, so the center point is somewhere else, so the dimension updates by itself. Now, there is one thing that you should consider doing if you are in a situation like that, that actually you can break this associativity connection link to these items if you want. There could be a scenario what you would like to do. So to demonstrate that, I will break the connection between this and the window. The other one won't break. And this you can find in the edit and change dimension to non-associative. So I just click on this one, enter. So the connection is broken. I cannot see it, but when I make another change, let's just move it back to where it was. It was 0.7. See, now this reacts to the change, but the other one
doesn't.
So yeah. So let's just undo this because I'm more happy with with this associative.
It's better to keep them connected.
Thing, but yeah, and one another thing, you can shape how these dimensions look like. I will go deeper to the settings with this one because this is a good representation of what I'm about to talk about now. But there is one another thing is if you click here and you would like to change the text of this one. First things first, it's a measured value, so you should change the thing that you measured instead of changing the text. But you can actually click here and change the text if you want. And for your surprise, you won't see the value. Yes, you will see a hash mark, and that means that whatever you see there, it's measured. It's automatically generated by the software. That's why you cannot see 2.19 there. Instead of that, you can see the hash mark. That tells you that the software measured this value. But actually, you can use this for a very interesting thing. For example, when you work with, I don't know, furniture, you can say, okay, this is the width of that something, with measured value. Okay, so it will appear like that.
So that's how you can add text to a dynamic field.
Yeah. So you can keep the dynamic context of this thing, and you can also add some static text if you would like to do that. I'm just undone that, but you can use these for specific measurements all around the drawing.
Before we go more into the styles and how to make them look like that, there's one automated measurement I want you to show us, and that's the lamps and light sources. Yeah, and sockets, because I noticed that we have a lot of sockets and switches on this.
Yeah, well, those are specific measurements. As you can see, these are kind of more like architectural specific measurements. We can argue about that, but those are mostly arcs and angles and lengths and things like that. But these are specific to the interior. And if I would like to, I can measure a cabinet here. I can add a distance measurement for switches and sockets, which I will do. I think I'll just do it here. So I just pick up the wall and I just place it somewhere here. I think I will confuse the measurements with these one, but it's quite nice. So the software just simply picks the same side and it measures the socket position from the two corners. And when you move it, it will react to that change. So you can repeat the same thing here.
How about lights?
About the lights, you can use this lamps on wall. This automatic tool will measure only based on the same principles, windows that lamps that are attached to walls.
Oh, so mounted on either walls or ceilings.
Yeah, not ceilings. This is specific for walls.
Yes.
Yeah. If you would like to measure the ceiling lamps, you should use the other ones. But this one is automated for the lamps on walls. I think I have these here. So I just pick this up and it will automatically measure it. The distance is not that perfect, but I can make it different. And then there is also a tool that is allowing you to manage the elevations of either these lamps, or in case of switches and sockets, you have the same option. Manage elevations, it's called manage elevations because you have actually 4 different options how to represent and erase and represent these things. If I'm about to use the all elevations option, it's an automated tool that is just tracking and keep on searching these things, and wherever it finds some socket or switch or anything else, it will just place this elevation next to it. That's how.
Now I see a lot of values where rounding is added, and I think this is the point where we talk about the styles again, just to show how you can set this up, because that's one way how they look like, but maybe you want to customize these measurements and dimensions.
Yeah. Well, for example, this specific way of representing the value is based on 2 things. If I select this, I can tell you why it's looking like that. It is based on the settings that we can see here. And first things first, we can see the value so accurate like this because it is round up to 0.5 centimeters. If I change this to a different standard, let's make it 1 centimeter, so the accuracy is actually half a centimeter less in the measurement, it will just change the rounding. Well, I'm happy with that. I know that the real value is a few millimeters larger or smaller, but and it's actually still measuring the same distance. It's just how it represents the value.
Yes.
You can go back to change the settings, and you can actually change something like DIN, and in that case you can even change the unit system that you are using. You can change to millimeters and then say, okay, about to represent
but only
it like
for
this.
this measurement, right? So you didn't save this as a style, you just decided that this should be a...
Yes, if I want, I can do that. I can just go and let's say, okay, let's just add the new style and just like say, these are length dimensions for millimeters, in millimeters or something like that. And also, I think it's worth talking about that you can use not only the metric system, but you can use also feet and inches. Let's just switch it here. And let's say, okay, I'm happy with this. Let's see how it looks like. This is how it's represented in feet and inches. And I even can set up
the fractional digits.
The
so
fractional digits,
if you measure in fourths or eighths or even 30 seconds, then that's how you can do it. So you can set this up based on what you do. I know that many industries out there are using different fractionals, but that's the way to do it. It's a recurring question on whether ARCHLine supports imperial units. It does. You can set up the default units in the setting of the software, but if for whatever reason you want to create a secondary measurement style which has a different setup, this is how you can do it.
Well, actually, that's 2 different things, just as you mentioned. One is the system which you're working in, and the other one is the system where you represent those things designed in one sort of system. So I can still work in millimeters or meters and represent my values in feet and inches, and the other way around. So this is part of an documentation issue where you decide of how you represent these values.
Perfect. So much about measurements. We are going to touch upon this later on. Let's talk about annotations, which are pretty much connected to what we just discussed. They work a bit similarly, but there are differences. So what about annotations, and what do we talk about them?
Well, annotations they come in many different forms. If we are already here, let's just pick one, which is the labels. I think it's wise to talk about this here because this actually allows you to create something like this here. You can say, well, this is kind of let's say it's a wooden staircase or something like this, and I will just point to this staircase here, and I just place it here someplace, paste the breakpoint here, and then point the arrow anywhere on this drawing, and then when I'm done, I just hit enter, and the software will create this. And you can just do the same thing all around. The software by default repeats the same text, so if you would like to add the same text all around your drawing, it's wise doing them in groups. Let's say I'm about to put these texts at other places. You can actually Control-C, Control-V, paste these as well. But this is also something that you can just pick up and change the style. You can even set up a different style, different color, different font, and so on.
Yes, we'll show that later on. What about plain text?
The plain text is what we can see here, for example. It's not in the dimension. It's actually a drafting tool. It's the text. You have many different options. You can even set up text in table. You can even import Excel tables if you have calculations and things like that. The simplest tool is the place text. This allows you to, I don't know, pick up something and say, this is the side border, just as we saw this before. And okay, let's just paste it here. And well, I can actually set this up and say, okay, it's here. But instead of this horizontal line, I would like to align it with the other one. And so then I can just pick up the rotate from, pinpoint this point, and then, just align this with the other one. You can actually even use these if you would like to be very specific and you would like to 100% parallel with the other item that is over there. So you can just say, okay, parallel with this one, and then you just click and then you align them.
How do you modify the text?
It's actually the same, like in case of the dimension. You can just select it, click inside the text, and then you just type something else and then say okay.
Now we'll talk about later on how you can change the font and letter types, but there's one thing that we can insert here, and that is using symbols.
Yeah.
They could be anything, north signs, entrance sign, or anything like that, but these are, how do they behave, how you can use them?
Yeah, well, let's just place an entrance arrow here. This will represent the main entrance of this building. Again, this is something that is represented different from country to country, but now I will use just a filled black arrow. These are in the signs actually, but if I don't remember, I just type arrow. And no, these are the arrow heads here, and I think I'm happy with this one. This looks cool. Let's just place it here, and well, I have two options. I can just paste it and then rotate it, but actually when you see this rotate option here, you can just click that, pinpoint it to the door, and then just flip it around and say, well, this is I actually lock in the direction, the horizontal direction with the shift key.
That's right.
And then I just click there, and then that's what we see there.
But this applies to any kind of situation when you want to add a two-dimensional group, but that's just one example.
And you can even create these groups by yourself. So the software is shipped with the default groups, north signs, arrowheads, and so on. And also you can, create your own groups by simply drawing them and then turning them into library groups and name them.
Carrying on with the dimensions, there's a special tool called Room and Area, which is able to actually tell you more about the rooms that you have created. Now, what does this tool do?
Well, okay, then let's just compare this room and area with the dimension tool as well, so we will see the difference. So we will talk about the room and area measurement, how you can do that. The room and area measurement, actually there is a dimension tool which is called the area dimension, and it's well, it should not be here. It's in the building, and it's called area. It's very simple. You just either pick items and then the software will recognize the contour, or you just say, okay, it's a room, or you just free draw a polygon. Let's just start with a polygon. And for some reason, I would like to pick this area, draw it around. Well, I just keep it simple now, and I just follow this contour. And then whatever I did with this one, I actually made a mistake over there, so I can also show you how to fix that. The software measures this. You can say, okay, enter, and then place this text somewhere, and then the software recognizes, okay, that was the area. Now we work in metric system, and then when you select it, the software keeps the original contour, and then you can make fixes, move this node somewhere else, and then it will update itself. So this is how you can measure certain areas. The same tool you can use for a room as well.
And is that what you would use for measuring rooms?
No. In case of rooms, I would use the tool that is called Building and Room and Area, because that is specifically tailored for that situation. Room and Area is actually coming with several forms. The first, which I would like to talk about, is the automatic placement. Automatic placement auto-recognizes and auto-generates room stamps or room, room information in all of the rooms with a very simple text with room and a number, and then you can change the room text. Let's say this is actually a bedroom.
Yeah, the software doesn't know by itself what the room's actual role is. You have to name them.
So actually, you can quite quickly you can cycle through these rooms and then just give them a proper name. But there is another tool which I would like to recommend, and that's the Room and Area Room by Walls. A Room by Walls is actually doing this. You just click there, and then it's by default giving you more information. That's just a setting. You can go into the settings, and then you can figure out what happens. Actually, this is also something that is based on local standards. You can either use DIN, VOFIV, or Norm 1. You can also change the limits of this room, how it's recognized, and this will actually give the opportunity that the software actually can extract information in an Excel file and calculate the volume of the room as well. Even if it's having a roof or something with some very weird shape, it's calculating the volume as well. There are the calculated values here. Here is where you can see and change the room name. You can actually set up different apartment units, group them together, that this is apartment unit 1, 2, 3, and all of them has, bedroom and kitchen and other things. You can set up the gross area, and you can set up a different area setting. Even the volume is here now. It's very small, simply because I did not change the upper limit of the very well. Actually, it's very small. So you can. I just disable everything here and say auto recognize it. I don't want to care about that. Yes. I already designed it. And there is also something that's called the abbreviations, and you can say, well, for example, you would like to distinguish the gross area from the other area, and so you can say that, okay, this is GA for gross area, and then we can see that, okay, now so if I have other options enabled, which we saw before, and that's the calculated values, and this is where you can enable all of these. This is how you will be able to distinguish which is which. Also, in the properties, you can set up the text style, the style itself. So you cannot piece by piece set up all of the fonts for all of the settings, but you can pick up a ready-made style that you have created before, or it's shipped with the software, and then you can use that. So let's change this, for example, to, I don't know, times 500 and redraw. So we have a different font style. I will just actually turn it back to something else.
Can you tell us if this room and area label has any connection to the room, like the measurements do? So if you change the contour of the room, for instance, what happens? Does it update automatically or asks for your permission?
Yeah, this automatically updates. It will actually tell you that the room shape has changed. Should I update these things? There are certain triggers in the software when it recognizes the changes, and then you can say, okay, update it. But this only happens with these room stamps, room and area tools that you use by auto recognizing the walls, because there is the other one, the room by polygon, which is quite similar to this one, but in this case you can see only a measured value, and this actually creates the same stamp but with a fixed area. So you can use these for gardens, carriage ways.
That's a scenario where you would
and other things. Yeah. Now, so when you would like to represent more likely something like this than just simply a value.
You briefly mentioned the roof spaces and lofts. There's a special scenario for them. You need to know what is the actual amount of living space.
Yeah.
Because in every country these regulations are different, meaning that the amount of space which should be deducted is different. But how do you calculate that?
Let me just quickly create. I actually prepared a very simple example here. Which looks like this. And there's a very simple volume here. It's handled as one single room, but of course it happens if the shape is different. Yes. I just created a wall which is not larger than 1 meter, I believe, and at this point it's around 2.7. And then I have this room shape here. And then, for example, here in this local area, we consider everything below 1.9 meter that is not useful for humans. It's okay for storing things, but not good for something that you would like to inhabit. So it should be either
deducted from your gross area, or
so you should not count it as the gross area. So this is actually based on two things. One thing is the software is by default set up to use this value in the item settings, and then it's here the minimal height belonging to the net area, and this is it here. You can change this value wherever you wish, and then the software will calculate based on those values. And then now, as I have this room here, I can see two different values, and that's the reason why. I can see the original kind of floor area, and this is the area that can be inhabited, count as an inhabited area.
Yes.
And there is this red line. So these settings are here. First things first, I activated both of these, and then I went to the profile and area properties, and I just made sure that it is represented red, and it's represented with this dashed line, and then it turned this into a visible clue here until when I already placed it, I used this here. It's called the net area on off switch. If I just disable it, I won't see, even it's there. But if I go back and I say, okay, just make it visible for me and then enable it, and then I can see it here.
Okay, so that's how you can enable and disable it.
Yeah.
I think this is what we wanted to discuss regarding dimensions and annotations. Let's see how it all comes together, how we put everything onto plot layouts. Because there's a couple of things we have to cover there too. But how do you go about adding all this detail, all this content onto plot layouts?
Okay, so what we already have here, I already actually created two layouts, but I will just add this
yes,
one
that gave
up,
me
to
the idea.
up to the other ones, yeah. So actually, the difference between a layout and the drawing itself, that this is a preparation to print or publish. This is the original drawing. This is where you make the detailing and everything else, and then you decide on what size of paper with what sort of text and everything else you would like to use it. Then everything else that is part of the drawing and is not handled as a drawing information and everything else as a kind of a title box or something like that. Everything else is handled in the drawing. Now, how to prepare something like this? I will prepare this as part of a plot layout. If you would like to create a plot layout, you have two options. Either you add it to an existing one. In that case, you select this,
yes,
and then use the tool in the documentation, plot layout, prepare plot layout. Or if I do not select it, but instead of that, I'm somewhere else, I'm on this drawing, and I say, okay, plot layout, prepare plot layout, and I just do the same thing. This should be, let's go with ISO A3, for example. This should be landscape, and I can even add kind of what we call a plot stamp or title box. I will describe this later, but I'm just selecting now one. And then, well, okay, this is the layout, and then I can actually fill this up automatically with information that I have provided earlier in the file BIM project settings. If I did not do that, this won't do anything, but if I filled it up, then some information will come from that. I only filled up the consigner, the designation designer, and the project, but all of these are coming here, and I can just say, okay, just fill it up with this information, and then the software automatically fills them up. You can actually use static groups as well. That's fine. You can create, and you should create your own, because everyone has to have.
Yes.
Everyone likes.
Maybe.
Yeah, with a company logo or something like that. Or you can go with this one. All will work the same way. And then now to assemble the layout, you can go and select. Well, let's just go with the floor plan, and I should go with the ground floor. This ground floor should fall here. In a size, I don't know. Let's go with 1:100. I think this should fit the screen. And let's just place it over here. Now I can see that perhaps I can see too much of this area. This will be part of a different documentation, so I don't want to see this part. If I click on the layout, I mean the part of the layout, the drawing representation of the original drawing, because that's not the drawing, this is just a plot layout representation. I can change its borders. I can just say that, okay, I don't want to see the right-hand side, because actually I would like to place another copy of this here. And then this is how you can assemble it. You can actually paste the same drawing twice, or just as many as you wish, saying that, well, okay, let's just go with the ground floor again. But in this case, this should be, I don't know, 1:50. That's rather large. But I'm using this to delimit the content to only
so you can offset
the one of the rooms, for example. There is another way, which I will show you again, show you as well, but I'm just simply using the same tool to limit what I can see, and then just move it somewhere. I can even rotate it and things like that. But now we can see the same original drawing. They are like, you know, windows or portals to the original content. And whenever I change the original content, I will show you that the software will reflect those changes, and it will actually update when I say so. It will update the content. Let's just do something like that. Okay, I'm about to, I don't know, remove this here and this here. See, the dimension also disappeared because it was linked
Connected
to the item. Right. I actually erased them. I don't want to see them because we changed our minds. And then I come here and I say, okay, update this one, right click and refresh this. If I actually would like to refresh all of these, I click on this one, but now I just choose this one. And then the software rereads this information, replaces with the original, and then now it's the current version. So whenever you would like to, you worked on something, I don't know, months ago, so you are not sure, you did some changes, but you're not sure if it's up to date, you should just right click there and say, okay, update everything, and then just wait until it finishes its task.
You mentioned something about having several versions of the same model on one plot layout. How do you do that? Do you need to copy the model, do changes, and add it as a separate drawing? Or?
No, well, you can do that, but there's a faster and more kind of self-containing way to do so. Well, what we see here is the drawing, but what we want to see is the same drawing with different representations. For that, the software implies the idea of layers. Now, the layers are something that are for handling versions. So if I would like to see this drawing in the left-hand side in a larger version, but without the furnishing for any sort of reason, all I have to do is to make sure that I have placed everything on the proper layers, and then go and edit this one. See, I'm not editing a property of a wall, a window, or something. I'm editing the property of this insert.
Yes.
And then here I can decide, okay, this should be represented
from here.
But I cannot do many things. I can only change the visibility, because here I cannot edit anything. It's just a visual representation of the original. So let's say I don't want to see the objects, these, and these, and well, I just disable everything like this, and see, they are gone because they were objects and they were on object layers, and then say okay, and then now I can see the same content. So if I change the wall here, and it will be reflected here as well. If I go back and change something here, I can update both of them. But the same thing, one copy will be represented with this information in it, and the other will be represented with a different one. And to complete this cycle, let me show you a third way of pasting things here, and that's when you already decided that you just would like to insert one specific detail of that drawing, and this comes this way. Let's say I'm about to copy a part to the plot layout, okay? And then now I'm selecting, for any sort of reason, I'm selecting this one.
This corner.
And picking up with that corner point. And then coming to this one and saying that, okay, just paste it here in any of these. Or I can actually just pick and type a certain value as well. Let's say I would like to see it in 1 to 25. It's very large, but
yeah, but
I'll just place it here. So. Say, and and I can do the same thing with this one. I can make changes with, because it was too large. So that's enough. I just wanted to represent this value here. And the same thing you can do with layout, with elevations and sections. I see there that we have a question about how we can do the detailing and other things like that. You can actually make at any time a copy of the dynamic content, which is the original, which was the original section, which was auto-generated, and it keeps the link with the original building parts. You can select that, make a copy, and paste it into a 2D view.
Yes,
we have
it's very important, and we have to emphasize that, that it's not good practice to add additional details, drawing or measurement onto the plot layout. So the plot layout is only for collecting things from your model, right?
For publishing, yeah.
Yes, but if you want to have, for instance, this detail of this corner window, and you want to add additional details, you want to create a more detailed window jam, you take first this from your 2D plan onto another separate 2D drawing, then, or to the window, then you do the detailing over there with everything that you want to finish there, and then you grab the final product and add it to your layout.
I think I can quickly show an
Yes.
example about that, because I already auto-generated the section. I used this section tool and created 2 sections. It generated the section, and I made a copy of those and pasted into a sections drawing, and then the same way I created elevations. Now, this section drawing is not linked to the original document, the original building already, but I can make changes which otherwise I could not do only by modeling those. So I just made, you know, tweaks and you know, 2D detailing here. And then now I already pasted this the same way I pasted onto this layout or this one, and then I just would like to highlight this part and paste it the same way. So I can do it the same way around. I just go to documentation, copy part of the plot layout. Okay, let's just go with this one from here to here, and with this corner point, and then just copy and paste here, saying, but I should not use the Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, because this is a specific command for that. I just go to paste the plot layout 1 to, let's just go with 1 to 20, 1 to 50. Let's say it's twice as large. So I just placed it here, and then well, the only thing that I should do here is the specific title or something like that, but I should not change the measurement here. That's part of the original drawing. I should handle that via using over there on the original drawing here, not here. That should be part of the how I consider using the layers and the different versions of the same thing.
I think that covers up the plot layouts. Now we can talk about printing.
Okay.
Now printing it might seem as a very straightforward process, but there's a couple of things that we can show you, especially the print queue.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you have the plot layout ready to be published? What do you do then?
There are 3 different ways of printing. One, the simplest, the most primitive is the print what you see. That means you have this content in front of you. This is not prepared for publishing because it has no title, nothing else, just the raw drawing. In that case, you select that, you go to File and Print, or print to PDF, and then you can print it. But if you would like to publish it, you should create a layout, just as I did here, and then you should go to File, Print to PDF. For example, I'm not wanting to print it in a local printer. We are not connected to any. So I'm just preparing a layout, and then you should set up what sort of printing. You can actually change different printing standards, or you just go with the default one. You can even install third-party PDF printers as well. So you just pick up the name of this drawing, the size of the content. I think that was an A3, so I should go with an A3 landscape. And then you decide that I just would like to print the entire drawing, but I can go with this is called a window. And in case of layouts, it's useful to do, because I should have 2 or 3 or more layouts here. And then I can just pick this with 2 corner points, and then saying that, okay, this is the only content that I'm willing to print now. The other way around, if I would like to print those 2, I should create a print queue. So now it's represented this way, and then, well, I'm happy with that. I can center this content. I can actually just fine tweak how it's positioned here. And one important thing to highlight here, that the scale factor for a plot layout is always 1:1. You should not further downscale
it's already scaled down.
Yeah, because
right?
it's already scaled. All the content is already scaled, so you should not further downscale or upscale them. It's just as they are, 1:1. And then just print it, and the software will create the file. And at the end, now wanting to show you how to how to prepare multiple contents to kind of a print task or a print job. And that's in the file, and it's called the print queue. Now I already prepared this and this. So you have an idea that you can actually prepare these and add more and more content. I will add one so you can see how it works. And then you can say, okay, I'm finished with today, and then just execute all of these, create all of these documents, make hard copies or PDFs, or whatever I just set up here. So to add anything to a print queue, you should click on this one. You can see the same project navigator appearing here, and then you can select what is the drawing that you would like to pick up. Again, you can pick any of your floor plans, but you should pick up your layouts. and then you should say, okay, this was layout 1, and then I did not add layout 2 now, so I should go with layout 2. Okay, it's generating the content and it's adding it to it, and then I can change the settings. I can actually do it the same way as I prepared one single page. I will see the same printing dialog coming up, and this way I can just extend the print job list. And this is what I see now. This is, I believe that was A4, but it was landscape, I believe. And I should not print to this printer now if you would not see the result. So I should go with this one, and then just A5 landscape, center it again. And then, yeah, it should not be scaled to fit, never. It should not be ever be scaled to fit. If you would like to print something for engineering documentation, you should always pick up any of these. That's in this case 1:1, yes. So center this.
I think it was A3.
Oh, well, yeah, you're right. It was A3. So let's just center this again, and well, I'm happy with that. And then just hit apply. And again, there is one important thing. You can set up a file name here. You can say that this will be in a file which is called, well, let's say this will be our plot layout 1.2 or 1, okay? And when I hit apply, it's adding this to the print list. Now, I have prepared this earlier using a different file name. Let's just double check that. Okay, because it was prepared on a different computer, I should just make sure that I use a different name. This should be, again, I think I use this name.
And for the one in the middle too.
And for this one, it should be the same, PL01. And the reason I'm using the same file name, because if I do that, the software will add these as pages to the same document.
So it's going to be one PDF document with several pages.
Yeah, actually you can change the order of these things, and you can even disable things that, for example, you added something but is outdated, or for any reason you don't want to add it, you can just disable that, and then you can say, okay, let's just print it now. Let's just do that. And then the software, collects this data. It's just like, mechanically repeating the same things all over and over and over again, so you don't have to. So the software prepares this plot layout, and when it's finishing this task here, at the bottom you will see, and you will end up with a multi-page PDF that will be represented, and you can just send it to your clients.
Perfect. So basically that's what we wanted to discuss regarding annotations, dimensions, and plot layouts and plot stems. I think there's still a question we could look at, and that is, how can I copy stems or groups from one layout sheet to the next on the same document?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Meanwhile, we can see the end result. We'll look at the question in a second, but first let's just gawk at the result of ours.
Let's just close this one. So I have a 3-page PDF. One is an A3 page, and the rest is A4. And then this the content, the last one, the previous one, and so on. So you can actually just build up a full document and then just use it. I will talk about this a little bit later, a little bit more. But yes, let's just see that question.
Going back to the question, how can I copy stems groups from one layout sheet to the next on the same spot placement?
Whenever you copy anything in ARCHLine, when you select it, let's just say I'm selecting this one. It was. No, not this time. So when I have this, let's just start from here. We have these here, and they are called printing, and let's just go with an English one and pick, for example, this one. So when I place this, and then I changed anything in that, let's just place it, for example, here now. And I changed anything in that, I can just select that and Control copy, Control C, pick up a point that I can find on the other drawing. Sometimes I just simply use the page corner.
That's good.
And then I just paste it. And this is one way around. So I don't have to repeat things that I have already done. And then I just use this tool, which is very useful. There is a dedicated tool which is for fill modify title box, and then you can select that title box, and then you can just change the date. It's 2018 01. And then, so it appears over there and the date page. Now, there are two interesting topics about plot stems or title boxes. Title boxes are actually groups that you can design by yourself in real size, I mean paper size, and then you can save them using the drafting group and create local group in library, create group in library, so you can name it properly. If you create a stamp like this here, which is automatically by default filled with all the information that I can imagine I would like to ever fill, with John Doe doing this and living here and there, and then I can just use it and repeat it everywhere, and then using this fill up form, which is in the documentation, plot layout, fill modify, click here, I can change these. They are called the kind of static text. These are how I typed them to be. The software is also shipped with what we call them variables. And these variables are here. These are most of the variables that you can use by default, and they are not represented. See, there is the plot name, and there was the date. If I just erase this, I cannot see a value there. There's the date, but actually, if I click here, I can see something called $date. That's a variable. You can actually just use them when you create a plot stamp and you type a text $date and you paste it somewhere, then the software will auto recognize it when you enclose it into a group and use it as a plot stamp or title box, and it will automatically use it the same way. So this way you can actually peek into what sort of variables you can use if you want. You don't have to. You can use these, but you can. Most of the time, I simply just fill up a plot stamp or a title box by myself as I would ever fill fully, and then I just change that. That is also something that works fine.
Perfect. Was there anything else you wanted to tell regarding that?
No, I'm done with this.
That's what we wanted to talk about during this show. Obviously, if you feel that there's anything missing, we are always welcoming all the questions and remarks. Let's talk about what happens next. As you have already gotten used to it, every Wednesday we have an ARCHLine show. And the next one is going to be a very special one. This is about 3D modeling. Yeah. Now, so far we were working with elements which are preset. Doors, windows, walls, roofs. What happens if you want to create customized elements, an arbitrary shape, maybe something organic, maybe something customized? We look at the freeform 3D modeling tools with which you can create balusters, customized openings. Basically, I would say that the imagination is the only border, but now I can't find any examples. Maybe
we will see.
We will see. We'll see what we can come up with next week. So if you have anything to add to that, please let us know your questions. Again, thank you very much for your attention. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, subscribe to our channel, and if you're not an ARCHLine user yet, make sure that you download a trial, which you can do for a limited time, and you can test the software and tell us how you liked it. Thank you very much for your attention. See you next Wednesday.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.